other. The gentleman over there, for example, made a comment about the SEDIC bill, and I know that there were comments from the community on the SEDIC bill, and there's clearly misunderstanding about what the SEDIC bill does versus what the ASEZ company will do versus what this community forum or community stakeholder network is meant to do. So you're quite correct, sir, that the ASEZ Act says that there must be a managing company for the ASEZ, and then when the DTI approved the designation of the ASEZ, they made it clear that on the ASEZ company board, there must be representatives from the community, from labor, and what was the third one? Oh, and that the ASEZ must pay attention in particular to the development of small businesses and to skills development. So as a Western Cape government, we acknowledge that, and there's no intention on our side to try and short-circuit that. The project for us is one of a range of projects that we're trying to launch in Atlantis to reduce poverty, reduce unemployment, help community development. The ASEZ is one of those elements. There's a whole WASA approach, which is a whole of society approach. And colleagues of mine in the Department of Health and Education are working on that program. But our key intention is to attract investment to Atlantis so that jobs can be created and that small and medium-sized businesses have a meaningful opportunity to engage in that ASEZ. And so in our programmatic work, there will be skills development, there will be enterprise development. That is an undertaking from us as the Western Cape government. But let's understand what the role is of this community stakeholder network. If you look at the requirement to have a community representative on the board, how is that community representative identified? Is one board member adequate for the community to engage with? Is that the best way to engage with community, to hear community concerns? And so what we came up with was the notion of a community stakeholder forum or network that forms not an alternative, but an additional way for us to engage with the community. And for this community stakeholder network, and I hear a lot of concerns about who's on the community stakeholder network and how the process went. I understand that, and maybe my plea to you today would be that you don't see this as the end of the process, but that it is one of the steps in the process. And we must make an effort to make sure that youth are represented properly. We must make sure that our processes are understood, that the community support those processes. I have no issues with that. So thank you for all of the commitment that's been shown, and thank you for all of the issues that have been raised. And we will go back and work harder to do it right. But I would want to say that this community stakeholder network is one of the areas through which a board member from the community can be elected. And so we will look to this forum, to this network, to come up with proposals for how you identify the board member. Because there's one board member, we could potentially have two board members from the community, but how do you select that? So it will be one of the responsibilities of this community forum to help us figure out how to elect a board member to serve on the Atlantis ASEZ company board, and then to hold that board member accountable to the community. And so for me, that's a piece of work that must still happen. And I'd like to ask you to hold us accountable as a provincial government, and you will see my face at these events quite regularly, and then call us to task when we've not delivered on our promises. I don't want to say more than that. Thank you very much for staying the whole afternoon. Sure. Sorry, I wasn't clear enough. My name is Colonel Abrams. I work for the Department of Economic Development and Tourism, and I'm responsible in our department for helping the ASEZ project come to life. I'm one of the team that works with that law. Yes, absolutely. Chairperson? I think the community must work with GreenCape to improve on processes, to get this forum in shape and to have the proper representation. That's the one thing. And the second thing is I'd like community members to start thinking about how would you select a board member for the Atlantis ASEZ company. So just maybe one last point. CEDIC, which is a company that's being formed now, is not the Atlantis ASEZ company. It's a different structure. Chairperson, my sense is that the community are saying enough.
On your request suggest that the person that is nominated on the companies to qualify in terms of the company spectrum of something.
Okay, I'm here to talk about the close and the next steps and to define the relationship between the ASEZ and this community stakeholder network. If you're happy to hear me out, my name is Francis Jackson. I'm the project executive in GreenCape. I was born and raised just down the road here on Dusselberg Road in Campbell Village, and in 1982 my mother founded the Orion organization here in Atlantis with the Uzendorp family. A couple of months ago, our team at GreenCape spent the day with the Korea Primary Class 7s, the grade 7s, for Open Classroom Day. And there was a great little story which showed why we need this network. Because we came to that day thinking, let's plant some trees. And we went to the nursery to buy some trees. And we thought, what kind of trees should we get? We had good intentions. We thought, oh, let's get some fruit trees. Everyone likes fruit, right? We came to the school with our fruit trees. And the groundsman then said, now you're making another problem for us. Because you know what's going to happen now? Everyone's going to want to climb over our fence to come and eat the fruit. Now we have a security problem. And you know what that made me think? We came with good intentions, but we didn't really have everyone's perspective. We didn't know what that would look like if you lived and breathed Atlantis. And it's the same thing, if you think of the special economic zone, comes with the best intention. But it'll only know what is the most relevant and most valid thing to do if we talk to everyone who lives and breathes Atlantis. Because in the team that works the ASEZ, there will be people from Atlantis, as there are now in GreenCape. There will be people from province, there will be people from other parts of the country, even from overseas, and many of our investors are international investors. We will only be able to make the ASEZ relevant and to meet that objective of uplifting Atlantis if around the table we can get all those perspectives of you who live and breathe Atlantis. And that's the point of this community stakeholder network, so that the special economic zone can meet with a group that brings the whole perspective of the community. So when I stand here and I stand as GreenCape team and we're facilitating a process and I see the concerns you raise, because you want to be sure that this community stakeholder network is really representative and is legitimate. That concern is exactly the same concern that the special economic zone will have. Because the special economic zone will want to say, when we sit down at the table with this community stakeholder network, we are sitting down at the table with a truly legitimate representative organization. So we have the same objective here. We want to facilitate a process that results in everyone, including the ASEZ management and all the stakeholders in government, knowing that this is a legitimate organization and it represents the community. So when the ASEZ looks and sees there's good governance applied, and all the members of the committee are actually representative, then the ASEZ can commit to the engagement. And it's very important to recognize that this committee, this community stakeholder network, must sit at arm's length from the ASEZ. It must be independent. It must represent that arm's length view of community from community's perspective, not community as part of ASEZ perspective. You know what I'm saying? There needs to be that level of independence. But I've also seen In many cases with IPPs that I've worked with in the past, the independent power producers, these infrastructure facilities have tried the same thing. They've tried to set up a community structure. In some cases it worked, in some cases it didn't. And the most important thing is, in the beginning, you need to capacitate the structure, which means help it get to its feet and still keep that independence. So, in order to make sure that we don't make those mistakes, what the ASEZ will commit to doing is supporting the establishment of the structure, respecting its independence, and yet providing the resources. So what does that mean? That means that the ASEZ will sponsor governance training for those members of the committee. The ASEZ will also provide for facilitation of the key meetings. It's proposed that there will be quarterly meetings of the committee itself, which the ASEZ will provide facilitator if needed, provide the administration and secretarial support. And there will be quarterly meetings between the ASEZ management and the stakeholder network to cover all the agenda items that the stakeholder network will bring up. And the ASEZ will provide the resources for that, the administrative support, the minute taking, the filing, the invitations, and the venue. So we'll be there to make sure that this network doesn't suffer and is not able to function because it lacks governance capability or administrative resources. So that's the commitment from the ASEZ side. Providing, just as you are concerned, the ASEZ is sure that this network is legitimate and is truly representative. So it will be in your hands to make sure that it is, and that it speaks to your concerns, and that there's a feedback mechanism between you and this network. Because as much as there are organizations here that are organizations in their own right, and there are many organizations in the same sector, those who are on this committee don't only represent their own organization, they represent everyone in the community with that interest. So that's the kind of principle. The steps going forward, as was shared today, there are some gaps in the committee. There are 3 places that need to be filled still, 2 education slots and 1 youth slot. So there's a process now whereby GreenCape will have to continue with the process to have those slots filled with the support of the Oversight Committee. And then there'll be the closing out, there'll be the report made available, and there'll be the opportunity for you to scrutinize that report and make your comments or concerns formally lodged. So I hope that gives some reassurance on the process. Then going forward, the stakeholder network will have a work plan to put in place to define its agenda, to define its codes, to appoint the office bearers, and to define what agenda items it wants to raise with the ASEZ. So I think I'd like to make sure before everyone leaves that we recognize some of the people who've made this possible. It's been mentioned before that this has been a very long journey, and that there'll be people who walk this journey with us and put in many hours of their time, provided their perspectives, and put in blood, sweat, and tears, if you like. And they're not sitting on the committee necessarily today. But what I want to recognize is that they have carried the hopes and dreams of their neighbors, friends, and family in this process and supported that. And they've also they've come and become known and brought themselves up to be seen as key stakeholders themselves, proactively, constructively, and quite robustly engaging in the interest of the community. So what I want to point out is this hasn't only resulted in the election of 12 out of 15 of the committee members. That hasn't been the only outcome of this process. What has been amazing to see is that we now, everybody knows about a host more key players in this community. All those organizations that were nominated, all those members who served in the interim committee and the oversight committee, and others who participated. We now know you as key stakeholders in this community. And constituting this committee does not mean the door is now closed. The ASEZ will need to have a clear line of communication with all of you in addition to through this committee. Okay, so that door is still open. And we really appreciate it. And we've got a list here of people. I'm going to ask you nice and efficiently to come up as we close, because everybody wants to get out of here. It's 5 o'clock and it's hot. So, Alan Bierkes is there. Andrea Peterson, Amanda van Diemen, Andries Oliphant, Mr. Oliphant who was here. Please can you come forward? Olifant also has a gift. Anish Olifant, please can you come forward? Thank you very much. Small circle, don't leave. Andres? Thank you. And you're surprised. You're surprised because you engaged robustly and you think that we didn't appreciate it. Thank you. This is a token of our appreciation. Thank you. Who's up next? Charmaine Roberts. Carol David. Carol, thank you very much. Please also accept some flowers from us. Thank you. Sorry? Yes. So we're recognizing in particular those who participated over and above what was expected in terms of the mandate provided by the community. There were several people who put in special time on a community focus group within that interim committee, and others who put in also additional time. So we've also got a token of appreciation from Mr. David Ndlela. Mr. David Ndlela, please. Edwina MacDonald. Yes, your name is coming. Thank you very much. Enid Muzeli. Thank you, Enid. Muzeli. Emma Blankenberg. Not yet. Colonel Abrams of the interim committee. We'll keep yours for you. Joy Davids. James Dunkerman. Thank you, James. Thank you very much.